Hello to everyone joining. Welcome. We're so excited to have you. We'll be getting started in just a moment. We'll give folks another minute to join us. Welcome, everyone. We'll give it one more minute. We've got a few more folks popping up in the waiting room. Welcome, everyone. We'll be getting started in just a moment. All right. Happy International Development Week, everybody. We are so thrilled to have you join us today. So good to see so many happy smiling faces on a Monday. My name is Kari. I'm the Communications and Content Specialist at the Ontario Council for International Cooperation. I'll be letting a few more folks in as we go. But we are just so excited to be kicking off International Development Week with the launch of our Tapestry 2030 podcast and illustration series. This was a massive collaborative effort over the past few months. A lot of the folks involved in creating this and making this come to life are here today, and we'll get a chance to hear from them all. So thank you for making the time in your lunch hour to join us. This should be very exciting. I know we're all very excited that we've officially launched our first episode today. I'm going to start us off with a land acknowledgement, and I encourage all of us to take a moment to reflect on the past, present, and future caretakers of this land we're situated on. Sorry, just letting a few more folks in. So land acknowledgements serve as a way to honor and name the Indigenous communities who have and continue to strive for social justice on Turtle Island, known along settler colonial lines today as Canada. OCIC acknowledges the land in which we operate and now reside, Tikaranto, known today as Toronto. We acknowledge that our office is situated on the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabeg, and most recently, the Mississauga of the Credit First Nations. This territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabeg and Haudenosaunee allied nations to peaceably share and care for the lands around the Great Lakes. We also recognize that many of the nations of Indigenous peoples who presently live on this land and the ancestors who've hunted and gathered on Turtle Island. We want to think about moving our land acknowledgements beyond word into actions. So I invite you all to think about what this land acknowledgement means to you and to use it as a framework in which to engage with today's event and to think about how we can continue to be stronger allies and stand in solidarity with Indigenous communities moving forward. So I'll give everyone one moment to reflect on what this land acknowledgement means to you, and I'll continue to let folks in. Thank you, everyone. So now to kick us off, I'm going to hand it over to OCIC's Executive Director, Kimberly, to tell us a little bit about the Tapestry 2030 series. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you so much. Very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this launch of OCIC's inaugural Tapestry 2030 podcast and illustration series. Really, it's a pleasure to invite you to join us for International Development Week 2021 event in collaboration with all of our partners. I want to name the OCIC partners that are part of this is Bhutan Canada Foundation, CAP Network, CME Trust, HeartLinks Lazo de Corazon, Interpares, Partners in Health Canada, Rajon Share Care, the YMCA of Greater Toronto, and each of your respective international partners. And we're also working in partnership with our podcaster, Safa Shahkhalili, and illustrator Amanda Schutz. This initiative is undertaken with the financial support of the Government of Canada through Global Affairs Canada and is taken in a spirit of partnership and learning between all of those of us involved. So as many of you know, OCIC is a community of Ontario-based international cooperation organizations and individual associate members working for global social justice and universal sustainable development. We really believe in the power of storytelling as a tool to help build awareness and deepen understanding of complex issues. And we also think this is an important tool to move people from empathy to action. Collectively today, we're very proud to launch this Tapestry 2030 podcast and illustration series during International Development Week. So this is our week. This is a week dedicated to learning more about Canadian contributions to international development and humanitarian assistance. And in this series, on discussing international cooperation and global solidarity and the partnerships needed for gender transformative sustainable development. We really hope you'll find the stories and the insights found in the conversations between Safa and her guests from Ontario and around the world informative, but also inspiring. Just a few words about our artists. So we're very proud to have been able to work with Safa on this project, given her experience and her exploration of many issues, including ethics, power, systemic challenges, and the lessons learned in her own podcast series called Rethinking Development. We have so appreciated her podcasting and her project management skills, her insights, and her passions towards this initiative and this medium. We also hope you'll enjoy the vibrancy, the color, and the specificity of the illustrations that help to bring the podcast to life. Amongst the sample illustrations and other details you will find about Amanda on her website are the personal notes that she likes design and art making and collaborating with people who think positive. I just want to say that having worked closely with Amanda over the past several weeks, I can say with certainty that her skills and her commitment to her craft, her love of learning, and her values infuse her artistic and professional process and make her a treasure as a colleague. So I'd now like to invite Safa and then Amanda to each take a little bit of time to share their reflections on this initiative. So Safa, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So as Kim so kindly said, my name is Safa, and I'm the podcast producer behind Tapestry 2030. And I'm also international development consultant based in Toronto. So I wear a few different hats. And I was so, I felt honored to be chosen back in November to produce this series. And over the past few months, working with all the partners, both the Ontario-based partners and their global partners, to capture their stories and their reflections and kind of put it together in an audio storytelling format, of course, accompanied by the illustrations from Amanda. And so it's been a great few months. And just to clarify, should I just go on, or Kari, will you be wanting to ask questions?
I do have some questions for you, Safa.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I echo everything Kim says, and I know everyone who's worked with you does as well, about what a fantastic job you've done making this come to life. I think my first question for you is, what was your approach to creating a series like this and connecting with partners in Ontario and around the world?
Sure. So the main word that kind of resonated from the first day until now is collaboration. So the idea was really to work together with the partners to really share ideas. And so when I initially came on board, the OCIC team had chosen the 8 OCIC member organizations that were to participate, and they in turn had chosen their partners who they wanted to be in conversation with. So I think for many of us, it was the first time doing a podcast interview. So we began with kind of a preparatory meeting to share a bit about what they can expect, the audio storytelling format, and just some tips about how to kind of format and pace their narrative in a way that would translate well to the audio or podcast genre. So that's kind of a bit of the way we started. And we did really intend for it to kind of be an organic interview conversation. So although there was some discussions about guiding questions and guiding themes, in the end, when we started recording and we started having the conversation, we were open to see where it would take us. And then through that conversation, then we had an editing process, and that too involved feedback from the partners, sharing also with Amanda in the illustration process, and bringing it all together and kind of packaging it into an episode format.
That speaks so well to the real partnership approach from beginning to end, Safa. And I saw a lot of heads nodding when you mentioned the first time a lot of us dove into the podcasting world. So it's been so great. We're so grateful to have you guide us through it. And we're all podcast experts, right, folks? And listening to some of these conversations, they're so different in their topics and what folks shared. But did you notice any common themes or threads that started to emerge as you put this together?
Yes, absolutely. So there were kind of two dimensions to that. On one hand, all of the episodes, across all 8 episodes, reflections on partnership were key. And some of the words that kept coming up in all the conversations across all the organizations, and some of them have been partners for 30 years now, for example, in the case of Interpares and Tinigena. So really, in all of these partnerships, whether it's been over decades or a few years, some of the words that came up were words like long-term accompaniment or listening, trust, support, the kind of words that really allude to this type of long-term relationship where people are treating each other not only as colleagues, but also friends, and really being there for each other over the long term, not just on a project basis. So I think that comes out throughout many of the episodes in the reflections that the partners share. So that's more about their relationship and some of the commonality there. But on the other hand, we also, of course, spoke to the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in that context, in terms of the gender dimensions, many of the partners describe the really disproportionate impact it's had on women and girls in the communities they're working with. So whether that's an increase in terms of domestic abuse cases, increase in terms of teenage pregnancies, just struggles to provide food in terms of caring for children, and in households where now so many people are at home where they normally would have been at work. So those are some of the common themes that came up in terms of having to adapt to the new challenges brought on by the pandemic.
Thank you, Safa, for summarizing that so powerfully. And I definitely noticed some of those themes carrying through many of our stories, and the way you've woven this series together has been really, really outstanding. We'll tell everyone where to listen and how to listen at the end, but I hope that's getting everybody excited to start. And one more question for you, Safa. For folks who are really interested in your work, where can we find you and where can we follow along with you?
Oh, thank you. So first of all, you can listen to Tapestry on the OCIC website, but if you're also interested, you can find my work at Rethinking Development Podcast, which is another show. So we're on social media and we have a website, so you can find us there.
Thank you, Safa. I'll hand it over to our other creator who is essential in this series, Amanda. Amanda, would you mind introducing yourself to everybody?
Hi, everybody. So happy to be here and to see all your faces. So my name is Amanda Schutz, and I'm an illustrator, artist, creative director at a small design studio in Edmonton, Alberta called Curio Studio. My main focus of interest, illustration-wise, in recent years has been various plant species in Alberta, actually. I've explored illustrating them in a variety of media and styles, namely botanical realism, illustrative, abstract, surface pattern, etc. I've always loved drawing plants, but I began focusing on that stronger when my son was born 4 years ago. And I started a very large art grant on Alberta lichen species. So I've drawn medicinal plants, collaborated with community groups on drawing nature stuff. And now, since the pandemic has been in full swing, I've been focusing more on painterly botanicals. That said, I do love creating narrative work in my illustrations, and the Tapestry 2030 project gave me the unique opportunity to explore how to tell the story of a podcast episode through digital illustration.
Thank you. We've shared Amanda's first episode illustration on social today, and I was letting everyone know there's so much buzz and questions about who the amazing artist is. So as you mentioned, the series is not focused on plants. It was a little bit different than some of your work in the past. So what was your approach to creating the beautiful artwork for this series?
Well, I pulled up some of the images and some of my process on the computer here, and I'm going to share my screen so everyone can see. Can everyone see my screen? Great. Okay. To begin the project, we actually had to do a little bit of work to do some overall branding for Tapestry 2030, which is kind of challenging since I hadn't even listened to a single episode yet. But we did a lot of brainstorming and collaborated in discussions of common themes for the podcast. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is some of the initial sketches that I created for the overall look. And I also started exploring what the color palette for the podcast would be right at the beginning as well. So you'll see here how the illustration branding evolved. It's pretty obvious that colorful threads was a common theme that was actually used in all of the work. But with the branding itself, I wanted it to feel bright, colorful, and energetic. Moving along, I'm just showing an example of my sketch process when I developed the very first illustration. So what you see here is the beginning sketches. I showed two concepts for this one. Oh, 1 second. So this was a revised sketch incorporating a little bit of feedback from Safa. And I have to say that Safa was a really integral part of my process. Every time I did a sketch, I ran it by her, and she always found like little things that I could do to kind of improve and make the sketch connect better with the podcast itself. So here's an example of final outcome. There was some small tweaks that happened at the very end. But yeah, I was really pleased with this first one, and I think the partners were as well. We were able to share this process like earlier on in an earlier phase with some of the meetings with the partners. And it helped kind of, I guess, make the partners understand what I kind of go through step by step to develop an illustration. So finally, I'm going to share just a few more of the final illustrations. So obviously, a bunch of you have probably seen this first one launched today. I think this one is launching this week as well. Yeah.
Thursday.
Hooray. So this one was a really exciting one. I was able to make some small tweaks to the front characters, and I was able to incorporate some pattern work into this illustration that some reference photo was provided to me for that. This is the YMCA, which is going to be launched in the upcoming weeks. And this one is going to be launched in the upcoming weeks as well. So you can see that I have been able to incorporate some plant stuff.
Awesome to see that. And I just want to say, as someone who is definitely not an artist, it's been so fascinating and eye-opening to me to watch you work through this process and to see the final product. And I think a lot of partners would agree with that as well.
Oh, thanks so much.
I asked Safa this, but did you notice any common themes or threads, as we might say, emerging as you were working through this process?
Well, one thing I noticed right at the beginning is that it felt very important to ensure that each participant felt seen in the illustrations. And I mean, that's something that is important in any illustration project, but it came out very strong with this because, I had the opportunity to actually illustrate specific characters that were depicted, people that were depicted in the podcast series. I also noticed that, like, when I asked the participants for feedback on the sketches, they felt very excited to be included, and that like energized me. And I just felt like the collaboration was stronger than usual, and that felt really important. While I do my own like photo research and content research for any illustration project, it can be a little bit difficult to totally understand understand that content without a deeper dive. So I had the opportunity to receive like specific photo reference from each organization, including but not limited to patterns, locations, style of dress, plant and animal life, etc. So while I do my own research online, I don't think I would have really been able to fully capture those details in each illustration without the participants sending me specific imagery. And I felt very excited about that. And then just generally speaking, I noticed that this series ended up being very, very vibrant. I generally don't use a ton of color in my work or as many colors in one illustration, but it just felt like color was a really important part of these outcomes. And then just generally speaking, the experience for me was very fulfilling, and it has me kind of reflecting on how I plan to collaborate with my clients in the future. So I'm very excited and glad.
That's so good to hear. And my last question, if we want to see more illustrations from you, where can we find you?
Well, you can check out my website, amandaschutz.com. So that's AMANDASCHUTZ.com. And then I'm Amanda Schutze. That's my nickname. It's the same, but with an IE on the end on Instagram and Twitter.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Amanda. So Safa and Amanda are really the creators who brought this idea that OCIC had to life. The other flip part of that coin are the partners whose stories were shared, and they are such powerful stories. So now we want to move on to have you have a chance to hear from some of our amazing partners who are part of this. I'll ask Kent from Bouton Canada Foundation to start. And Kent's episode at Bouton Canada Foundation was actually released today, which is very exciting. Everybody please go listen after this if you haven't already. But Kent, if you could introduce yourself, introduce Bouton Canada Foundation, and just tell us a little bit about what's at the heart of your story, that would be great.
Sure. So first of all, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see everybody here today. I want to start by just thanking OCIC for their leadership on this initiative. I think, you had to corral 8 different NGOs and keep us all in line. So a big thank you to Kari for all of the legwork that you did. Thank you to Kim for the leadership on this overall initiative. A big thank you. I mean, you've heard from Safa and Amanda already. A big thank you to both of them. Safa made this podcast easy. We're a small NGO with limited resources. This was really easy, and the outcome was fantastic. And the illustrations, Amanda, I think were ours, all of them, but ours in particular is really, really striking. And I think the colors and the images really capture not only Bhutan, but what our story is about. So a big thank you to OCIC and everyone involved. So as you heard, my name is Kent Schroeder. I'm the Executive Director of the Bouton Canada Foundation, or BCF. As I'm sure most of you know, Bhutan is a little country in South Asia surrounded by China and India. And it's probably most well known for an Indigenous development model known as, Gross National Happiness, or GNH, which you'll hear a little bit about in the podcast. Our role, we've been in existence since about 2009, and our role in Bhutan has primarily been around building capacity in the education sector. But what you'll hear in the podcast is a new kind of initiative that we started in 2019. And it's an initiative that is focusing on the restoration of something called the Trans-Bouton Trail, or the TBT. And this is a trail that runs east to west across the entire country of Bhutan. It's historically very important. It's been around for centuries, but it's stopped being in use around the 1960s once they started building roads. And so we are involved in restoring this trail. It might sound kind of like an infrastructure project, but it's much more of an integrated project where we're focusing not only on the physical restoration of the trail, but we're focused on community connectedness, environmental education, promoting healthy lifestyles, fostering local economic development, and cultural reclamation. So sort of an integrated approach to this physical trail restoration. Our partner in all of this is the Tourism Council of Bhutan, or TCB, and they are an autonomous government agency. So this is a partnership between government and then an international NGO. And then also you'll hear in the podcast, there's a local CSO involved. So those are the nature of the partners. And I think to get at what the heart of our story is, it's really about how effective partnering enables partners to pivot to address crisis. And in this case, of course, COVID. Excuse me. And maybe just to frame that a little while ago, I took a bit of a dive into the research on international partnerships, particularly around global solidarity partnerships and global cooperation partnerships. And it's an interesting body of research. And I just want to read you one quotation that it comes from one study, but it sort of summarizes this research on partnership. And it says, in terms of partnership, the heart and mind of the development community are in the right place. It is the hands and feet that cause problems. Okay, so as a development community, our hearts are in the right place. We buy into partnership, but it's in the practical application, the hands and feet, that cause problems. And I think our story that you'll hear in the podcast, it's about trying to get the hands and feet right. And then what are the implications of getting that right for responding to COVID or responding to crisis? And you'll hear our story. It's about partnering organically. It's about aligning priorities among different partners, excuse me. And it's about sort of recognizing and foregrounding complementary skills that different kinds of partners have. And what you'll hear is that nature of our partnership, and I don't want to give you too many details because I want you to go listen to the podcast, but that nature of our partnership, it allowed the partners in the project to pivot to provide emergency employment to hundreds of people when COVID hit Bhutan. And so the Trans-Bouton Trail project was going on before COVID. Once COVID hit, because of the nature of our partners, we were able to pivot, provide hundreds of people with employment. And what that did in turn is a couple of things. First of all, it allowed the project to deepen its links to local communities by hiring these people from local communities. And it also allowed us to actually accelerate the entire restoration of the trail. So ironically, I mean, an unfortunate irony, I guess, is our project is now further ahead than had COVID not happened. And that's a reflection of the nature of our partnership and how we were able to pivot. So that's all I'm going to say. I'd encourage you to go have a listen. As you've heard, it's out today. Take a look at the illustration. It's fantastic. So you can see it on our website. You can see it on OCIC's website and wherever you get your podcasts. So thank you very much.
That's a great teaser, Kent. Thank you. And this was a topic I honestly didn't know very much about. So that organic partnership you mentioned really shone through for me. Thank you for that summary. Next, I'm going to hand it over to Heather and Titus from CME Trust. Their episode's coming up in a couple of weeks, but Heather, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Kari. Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Arnold. I'm the president of CME Trust. We are an organization working in partnership to provide educational opportunities to young people from the Mathare community, which is an informal settlement in Nairobi, Kenya. And our primary program is to provide secondary school scholarships. And we also aim to provide a more holistic experience to our scholars, including technological, personal, professional development, and also to support our ever-growing alumni association, as well as our scholars who do go on to post-secondary studies. So we're very excited to be part of the Tapestry podcast program this year. And thank you so much to Kari and Kim and Safa and Amanda and everybody who has been involved in putting this on. It's been a great experience. I'm happy to have Titus Curia join us today. So Titus is going to talk about our episode, but just a little bit about him. He's the co-founder of CME Trust, and he is currently one of the 3 Kenyan field representatives who implement the program on the ground in Kenya and have been instrumental in our response to all the challenges brought on by COVID-19 this year. And outside of CME Trust, Titus is also an entrepreneur and a leader in the community in Mathare. So we're really lucky to have been working with him for the past 14 years and going into the future as well. So over to you, Titus. And you just come off mute so we can hear you.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for the amazing introduction. I feel very much part of the team right now, and I'm very excited to be here. First of all, is just to appreciate Safa for organizing everything, and Kari and the whole OCIC team. And also Amanda, we enjoyed looking at the illustration. It was amazing, a clear representation of my community. Really, really excited to see that, and we cannot wait for the launch on the 15th. So Our podcast basically talks about, we have different facets of organization represented in there. We have secondary scholars, we have post-secondary scholars, those are people in university and college. We also have some people we call Kenya field representatives, that is Esther and myself. And then we also have one of our co-founders and the founding president, that is Victoria Shepherd, who is also from Canada. So you'll get to learn more about our scholars talking about what is education to them, and also what community means to them. And also you'll get to learn more like how last year was for them, how they managed to succeed and to survive the pandemic, because it was difficult for everyone, but it was more difficult for people from Mathare, because as like any other community, we don't have a lot of opportunities, we don't have a lot of savings. The kids came back from school, there were uncertainty around social distancing, there were no masks, there was no water. So everything came to a standstill. As an organization, what did we do to make sure that things were continuing, things were running, the hope was still on? Remember, in the slums, there's a lot of early pregnancy even before COVID. This time around, the cases are worse. So what was CME Trust doing? We had an opportunity to have the post-secondary scholars talking about some of the initiatives that they started to help our scholars keep on doing that work, keep on studying, keep the focus going on. And I would say throughout that work, all our scholars returned to school back in January. We did not have any issue of someone getting pregnant or any person dropping out. So many programs have dropped out, have so many dropouts because of COVID, because so many scholars lost focus and they could not focus on what was important at that period of time. We also have Esther talking about what we did as an organization to make sure that the CME Trust community is well taken care of. The community includes the high school scholars, the university scholars, and also the parents. We supported everyone. We listened to the stakeholders in the community and reacted to what they needed for them to continue their work. Also, you listen a little bit from Victoria, where she talks about, how the journey started, why she got involved, and why she thinks that supporting people to break the vicious cycle of poverty is important. She has seen this in the first hand. She was in Kenya. She has lived in Nairobi. She experienced the disparity between people who have opportunities and those who cannot get these opportunities. She has been the bridge to make sure that we get this kind of support, this kind of word, this kind of awareness in Canada, but at the same time, try to get local support and encourage other local partners to come on board. And also you'll get to learn more from me when I talk about the history, the values, and also what makes this partnership different from other partnerships. What has made us succeed? Because in the last 15 years, we have had a lot of challenges, but also we have had a lot of milestones. We have had scholars who have come in and we have seen the 360 degree. When I say 360 degree, I am saying someone who came into the interview when they were 14, they graduated when they were 21 or 22 years from university. Right now they are working, but also they are coming back to be positive role models, not only for our scholars at CME Trust, but also for the community at large. And we're also talking a little bit about the vision we have for education, for the organization, and for the community at large, and what other people can come in and support us and push this all together. You can learn more about the what do you call it? The podcast when it launches on the 15th of February. Please follow us at CME Trust on all social media channels. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and also on Facebook. We will be retweeting when it's launched by OCIC, and we are following OCIC and making sure that we make our notification bell open so that when it launches, everyone in our network will have to listen to it, and they'll comment and they'll share it. So we are very much looking forward to the launch, and we're very excited to be here. And again, just to thank everyone that has been involved in this amazing work and giving us this opportunity to be part of this amazing process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Titus, and thank you, Heather. We're very excited as well. And I think, Titus, you said it so well that we've had a lot of challenges, but also a lot of milestones. I think that really sums it up well. Next, I'm going to hand it over to Eric and Rugi at Interpares. Eric, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Chauret, and I work with Interpares, which is a feminist organization that's based in Ottawa. And I'm joined with Rugi Balde, who works with Tinigena. Hi, Rugi. And first off, we just wanted to thank OCIC for this opportunity. I think it's been a really great experience, a great collaboration, and always looking forward to new initiatives to work more with Tinigena, an organization that's very close to Interpares' heart. So I've been working with Tinigena for since 2005, but my organization has actually started working with Tinigena back in 1991. So it's a very long partnership of solidarity. And I guess the podcast, if I had to sum it up, what it's about, it really is a story of hope and of friendship. And at the heart of the podcast is a story of working with women's organizations and women in their community so that they have greater control over the resources, over the lands, the seeds, and to have greater power within their community. And through that process, not only do the women benefit, but the entire community benefits. And so the podcast actually provides some testimonies of some women that Tinigena has been working with for quite a while now. So you'll hear Sally Camara, who usually produces palm oil. This is ecological palm oil, not the plantation kind. That's ecologically grown palm oil that's very important for the local diet. But because of the disruptions of COVID, she had the wisdom of also maintaining her home gardens. And so the wisdoms of not putting all your eggs in one basket is shared in her testimony. And you'll also hear from Monica Manbundi about her participation in a school meals program that Tinigena is helping to coordinate. And there's about 2,000 rural women that are participating in this, providing local, nutritious, ecologically grown foods to the schools, and how they had to adapt around COVID. So really some hopeful stories. And I would like to pass it over to Rugi now, who'll share some of her impressions about the process of developing this podcast and our partnership. Rugi, you're muted, I think. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for having me. My name is Rugi Balde, and I work as a project assistant in Tinigena. First and foremost, I would like to thank and congratulate the Council for this great initiative, and in particular to Interpares for our long-time partner, for inviting us and for giving us the opportunity to take part in such a great event, and for supporting Tinigena in projecting our work at an international level. Thank you, Eric. So as Eric said, Tinigena is a Guinea-Bissau NGO that works to promote the protection of the environment, natural and cultural resources, for the well-being of all generations. And Interpares has played a very important role on that throughout the years, as this partnership has been going on for almost 3 decades. During the podcast and by participating in it, we've had the opportunity to share with the public the nature of our 3 decades partnership. A partnership that has been tackling gender inequality by promoting particularly rural women emancipation in many different areas. We also work with the promotion of food security based on organic and locally produced food that respect climate concerns. We also discussed during the podcast Tinigena's perspective on how participating with on how the partnership with Interpares has been fundamental for our organizational development and emancipation, and a great example of how development organizations from the global north and the global south work by respecting and complementing each other, which is what happens in the case of Tinigena and in the Interpares. Now, regarding personally, regarding participating in this podcast, as Safa mentioned previously, for many of us, it was a first-time experience, and for me, it was for sure. So I was very nervous and quite unsure whether my contribution had been fruitful, but I must confess that the experience and the end result turned out to be great. And it was very fulfilling experience, and would like to thank Safa and Eric for the tips and the fantastic cooperation. Finally, I would like to share with you that we will be sharing this initiative on our social media and our website, on all our platforms, so that our followers will know what we are doing at the international level. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Eric and Rugi. It's so nice to hear from you both. This theme of transformative partnership keeps coming up, and a 3-decade partnership is certainly illustrative of that. So thank you so much for sharing. Up next, Claire from CAP Network. I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us a little bit about your experience.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Kari. I'm quite pleased to pick up on this thread of transformative partnerships, which was also the focus of our podcast episode. But it was also really, I think a term that is really well applied to our experience in producing this podcast. So we brought together 2 of our partners, one in Canada and one in Kenya, to talk about their experience partnering together at sort of a grassroots community level to achieve change in the informal settlement community of Kibera, which is nearby, but not, but sort of adjacent, I guess, to the Mathari community that Heather spoke about. Our experience of partnering with these 2 phenomenal community groups and seeing how important their relationship of trust was this past year to their ability to pivot and respond and change what they were doing very quickly to be able to respond to the needs related to COVID-19 as they started to play out in Kibera. And we really spent a lot of time reflecting on the power of relationships in order to be truly responsive to community needs, and thinking about how much different our experience might have been this year if the revenue or the funds that we were using to fund the work in Kibera were tied to an institutional funder that maybe had a lot of levels of bureaucracy or paperwork that may have been required to redeploy those funds in a different way. And because we were raising funds only from individuals and from a community of people really connected and knowledgeable and compassionate to the needs of Kibera and to this particular project, we didn't even need to ask permission, really. When we heard from our partners in Kibera that things needed to change, we were able to say, go ahead, start tomorrow. And that was a really powerful thing that allowed them to get really far ahead of where the response was from other institutions that were serving that community. But the neat thing I think about this process for us that I think is a little bit different from the other groups that participated is that our ability to be a partner in the Tapestry project was really facilitated by the relationship that we had with OCIC. And it's one of the phenomenal things about OCIC as an organization is really how personal these partnerships are, and how when you are a member of this organization, of this network, it's like you're part of a family and you are known and you are respected and you are understood. And it was that sort of personal relationship that really enabled us to participate, given that we just recorded our podcast 1 week ago. Many weeks after so many of the other episodes were completely wrapped up. And that was because of the challenges that we were experiencing in Kenya. We lost a couple of people very close to our project to COVID-19. And that caused delays in our ability to have our partner, Leonora Obara, who is a wonderful speaker. You'll really enjoy hearing from her. But it interrupted her ability to be present and to participate in an interview recording. And we are so grateful to all of the patience that was extended to us by OCIC and Safa and Amanda and the whole team to really working with us and enabling us to get our recording in there under the wire and to still be able to be part of this phenomenal project. So I think, in all respects, our experience with Tapestry has been a reflection of the importance of relationships in doing this kind of work. And that we need to get to know each other as partners in order to be really effective and to be able to support each other and put our best foot forward and achieve impact together. So thank you to everyone. I'm really excited to listen to all of the amazing stories that are going to be shared in the coming weeks through this podcast series. Some really phenomenal organizations, and we're truly honored to be associated with you all and to have gotten to be a part of this project. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Claire. What a great way to summarize the power of relationships, especially in the midst of COVID-19. So we're so happy to have your team on board as well. Finally, I'm handing it over to YMCA of Greater Toronto. So Esperanza and Carolina, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm really happy to be here and really listening to these stories. I have to connect really with so many elements of the stories of my colleagues who are sharing before. But one that I really am thinking now as I speak to you is that this podcast reflects the very nature of our partnership. And it is that of amplifying the voices of our partner and the work they are doing in the South. And that communication channel, I see it, imagine a telephone line that works both ways, because we are also amplifying what is being done in Canada and through the partnership of OCIC in other parts of the world. Because here we have today the presence of many of our colleagues from the YMCA of Colombia and Risaralda, who is our partner. So they are also learning from what's happening in other parts of the world. And this relationship with the YMCA of Risaralda in Colombia started about 2 years ago. I think it started before while we were getting to know each other, but really it has been connected through the work we do with youth, and we learn about the powerful programs they have in Risaralda that transform really the life not only of a young person, but of the whole community around them. So 2 years ago, we came together and we started partnering around their social school of art. But when COVID hit, the need was very different. The need was really around food security. So our partner told us, and we immediately said, of course, whatever you feel is needed. And that is also what for us is very important, is that they are very connected to the community and have the pulse of the community, so they feel when the changes happen. And right away, this amazing project that we want to share with all of you through our podcast that will be launched on February 18th came to life. And I have here, I don't want to take the stage because I have a very special person here that will talk about the project, Carolina Gallego. She is the young woman who dreamed one day about this project and the one who is leading it today, who brought it to a reality. And I think that there is no other person in the world who would speak better about the essence of this project than Carolina. So I'm here to serve really as her translator, and I would pass it on to her. Carolina, puedes hablar y yo te traduzco.
¿Ahí me escuchan?
Sí.
Hola, ¿cómo están todos? Muchas gracias por este espacio. Y bueno, contarles acerca de Familias Verdes. Es un proyecto que nace principalmente pues, bajo toda esta coyuntura en la que nos encontramos, y es también resolver o buscar resolver un poco esta parte de la alimentación las familias, ¿cierto? En las comunidades.
Caro,
Es así como...
¿puedo decir ahí?
Sí, claro. Tú me vas diciendo, porfa, dónde debo de parar para yo estar pendiente.
I don't want to miss anything of what she's saying. So Caro is saying that this project really comes out of the COVID issues and the food security concerns. And the project is called Familias Verdes, so green families. Que Caro, si hacemos más cortos, así no me pierdo nada de lo que vas a decir.
Está bien. Y bueno, es junto con estas familias empezar a concientizarnos de cómo accionar y cómo generar unas acciones para poder resolver todo el tema de la alimentación. Es por esto que Familias Verdes empieza a componerse de una parte de concientización medioambiental a través de la articulación de diferentes instituciones aliadas pues, de base con las que podemos trabajar todo el tema del reciclaje y el uso pues de todo lo que son residuos. Pero también nos damos cuenta que con estas familias podemos trabajar ahí.
Retomo. Estás diciendo muchas cosas. Caro is talking about it comes out of the need for food security with the families, but also is connected to an environmental aspect. So they are working directly with the families on how to solve the issue of food security, but also with other organizations that are working on the areas of recycling, for instance, or the environmental aspect of the project. Caro, si quieres, podemos hablar más, haces frases más cortas y así yo puedo.
Sí. ¿Sí? Listo. Y también con estas familias empezar a trabajar todo el tema de la agroecología.
And also with these families to start working on the agro-environmental aspect.
De esta forma empezamos a trabajar en Familias Verdes con dos líneas que nos permiten no solamente trabajar todo el tema de la soberanía alimentaria, sino concientizarnos frente al medio ambiente. Y es una experiencia.
That's how through Green Families, we started working with these families, not only about how to solve the issue of food security, but also about the environment. So that are the two lines of work of our project.
A través de un espacio que tenemos que se llama la Chagra del Despertar, que es el espacio donde tenemos la oportunidad de conocer agrosabedores, custodios de semillas, pero también personas que a través de su conocimiento nos pueden dar toda esta capacitación de cómo trabajar la tierra, ¿cierto? Pero de manera orgánica, entendiendo que todos podemos tener un alimento digno, sano, y que la gente también puede tenerlo dentro de sus casas y sabiendo pues todo esto que está sucediendo en la pandemia, pues cómo hacemos para que esa seguridad alimentaria pues precisamente se asegure dentro de las familias.
Bueno, so Caro is saying that the space where all this comes to life is in a small piece of land called the Chagra del Despertar, which means the small land for the awakening. And that's where all of this comes together. So the youth, but also people who are the custodians of the seed, and also people who hold the traditional, the ancestral knowledge of farming. So they all come together, and they are not only solving the issue of food security, but also learning about the environment and learning how to take care of the land. Caro, tú dijiste algo al final y lo perdí, discúlpame. Está muy, no quiero perderme la última parte que dijiste.
Les estaba diciendo que en este espacio podemos pues asegurar o podemos trabajar con todo este tema de la seguridad alimentaria, ¿sí? Que es uno de los temas pues más fuertes durante esta coyuntura.
So Caro is highlighting that the most pressing need of the community is food security. And so this is one of the primary goals of the project.
Adicionándole toda la parte de la línea pues de concientización medioambiental, pues que tiene que ver lo uno con lo otro, o sea, no debemos trabajar esto de manera desarticulada.
So she's also saying that we cannot work on food security without working on the environmental aspect. So we shouldn't see that these as two separated things. And that's why this project brings them together.
Y este proyecto pues tiene esa fortaleza y es que es trabajado en familias. ¿Sí?
And the
Con un
project
representante.
has that strength that is work with families. That's the unit of work in this project, are the families.
Teniendo un representante de sus familias para que sea el vocero en estos espacios pues que tenemos de capacitación por todo el tema de protocolos.
So each family has one representative to be able to follow the protocols for COVID, but this person will be also communicating all the knowledge to the family.
Bueno, como un poco lo que es Familias Verdes y también contarles algo muy importante y es el impacto que causa en el hecho de que nos podamos fortalecer en esta concientización de la seguridad alimentaria, de la soberanía alimentaria.
So she also is saying that she wants to communicate the impact that it causes, the impact that it has, to be able to educate people on the impact of this food crisis.
Sino también en toda la parte que tiene que ver con unas rutas que se hacen mensualmente dentro de la ciudad, recogiendo más de 1 tonelada de residuos sólidos, pues que van a parar en un relleno que ya no tiene vida útil.
But also they are also doing what they call recycling routes, that are places where they go and gather all the materials that could be recycled, and that if that doesn't happen, ultimately end up in a place where they would end and be contaminating the land and would not have any more use after that. So this project is also doing recycling of these materials.
Y bueno, invitarlos a que escuchen el podcast porque ahí tenemos un montón de detalles y de sonidos y diferentes experiencias que podemos vivir a través de ese podcast porque está muy lleno de lo que es la chagra, por ejemplo, el despertar, cómo sembramos, cómo se da pues todo ese proceso con las familias, con los jóvenes y cómo hacemos también para todo este tema y en medio de esta coyuntura y cómo lo hemos vivido.
Carolina is inviting us, all of you, to listen to the podcast. She said that the podcast is full of ideas, of sounds, of stories, of how things happen actually every day in the chagra of awakening, how these families come together to work at this project, and the energy of the youth and the stories of the youth. And so she's inviting us all to listen to the podcast. Thank you, Caro. And I think taking that last element, I just think the name of our podcast, which is Cultivating Relationships with the Land in Colombia, I think it's cultivating relationships with the land, but also cultivating our own partnership and our relationships with others. So cultivating relationships will be in capital letters for me. And it is what the project and the podcast is about. So I also want to thank OCIC, Safa, Carrie, Amanda, because really they made this an amazing learning project for us, a process for us. Even organizing ourselves for the podcast was very enriching for our partnership. So one more thing that we do together with OCIC and our partner, and really invite you to please follow the podcast, not only ours, but all of them. And yeah, let's continue working together. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Esperanza and Caro. And what an energizing way to kick off International Development Week. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Kent, Heather, Titus, Eric, Rugi, Claire, Esperanza, Julieta, and Caro for sharing your stories through Tapestry and also giving us a snippet today. This was so powerful. Thank you to everyone for coming together on your lunch break as well. I'll close us off by just thanking everyone involved in making this series come to life, including the OCIC team, Kim leading the charge for us, all the partners who were involved in sharing their stories, our creators, Safa and Amanda, and all the listeners as well. So before I close off entirely and let you get back to work, Safa, how can we listen to this amazing series?
Yes, absolutely. So before I jump into that, one thing I'd briefly like to say is that we might have not mentioned that all these episodes were recorded during lockdown for most of us. So there are stories from 8 different countries. And when we were recording, most people, they were in their homes, except there's one episode where Aisata was actually in the hospital that she works in Sierra Leone. So she was recording there. But just to set that up for you, that these were recordings during lockdown, during the pandemic times, and to listen. So you can listen either on the OCIC website or on the website of the participating partners. They're also going to share it on their websites. And of course, on your, the mainstream podcast players like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, a whole range of them. So you can go there, search for Tapestry 2030, subscribe so you can get notified of new episodes coming every Monday and Thursday, and listen there. But once you do listen, don't stop there, because we encourage you to really, after you listen, think about what resonated with you most. What is one thing that maybe you learned? What is one thing you want to hear more from? And even though in the episodes, the partners talk about one specific project that they have together, they all do have a range of other projects. And so if you're interested, go ahead and visit their website, learn more about all the other great initiatives that they have together, and message us if you have a comment, if you have feedback. Get in touch, send us a message. It would be great to hear from you in terms of the listeners and your reactions. And at the end of each episode, there is a call to action from the participants. They share with you some of the things that they invite you as listeners to consider doing. So please take a moment to take that in and reflect on those calls to actions as well. So thank you everyone. I think that's all I had to say about that.
Thank you, everybody. Listen to Safa and listen to the episodes. And thank you to the 5 partners who are represented today. We will have another discussion with the remaining 3 on March 5th. So keep an eye on your calendars for those. But that's everything from us. Thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy, happy listening, and happy IDW, everybody. Have a great rest of your Monday. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Gracias, Carolina.
Gracias.
Adiós.
Adiós.
Que esté muy bien.
Bye.